Dan the Wheelman, coming to you from beautiful Whistler, British Columbia. And with me today is the 2022 Infiniti QX55 four-door coupe crossover thing. It's kind of like the rambunctious twin sibling to the slightly more conservative QX50 crossover, and it's aimed, according to Infiniti, at a younger buying group. It's why you've got that slanted rear deck and the smaller rear doors, a very wide stance. I love the red paint job. This grille design is right on. I love these headlights, and the two-tone 20-inch wheels are right on the mark. But the thing about that buying group is they're often looking for a little more when it comes to the drive of their vehicle. And in that light, Infiniti has still given us the great VC turbo engine here, but they've also done a couple other tweaks to make it more fun to drive, according to them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it for a drive on the roads around Whistler and back in the city of Vancouver as well to see what Infiniti's on about. So stepping into the QX55, it's recognizable in here as an Infiniti, a modern Infiniti. You've got the double stacked infotainment system here. You have a nice kind of leather wrapped steering wheel. The lower screen is for, you know, your driver assistance systems, various other connections, your phone. Up here is where your Apple CarPlay appears, and for the first time in Infiniti, we have wireless Apple CarPlay, which is great, except for the fact that there's no wireless charging in here. And not only is there no wireless charging, there isn't really a great spot for your phone in general, which is kind of disappointing. By the way, having no wireless charging kind of makes wireless Apple CarPlay a little bit redundant, if I'm honest. But no place to really store your phone here. That is a strange move for them. I guess you could put it on top here when you have this closed. That's not that stable, and I think that's a bit of an issue because, you know, if we're talking about younger people, they love their phones, they love their devices, they have tons of them, and they want a place to store them. So now, I mean, you can kind of get it in there, and I guess a cup holder, but it's kind of cramped up here for storage. I got a nice storage bin here, though, which is good. Otherwise, it's really well equipped here. I've got great Bose audio, heated and cooled seats to 3 levels. I've got the paddle shifters here, a good view out over there. I have, and tonight it's kind of dark. You got like the black leather with some white contrast color stitching, but you got some other nice kind of aluminum bits in here too, like the Bose speaker grills, and you've got the cool kind of navigation knob down here as well, which is finished in silver. You got some silver around the shift lever, which is a little bit on the stubby side. It's kind of a strange shape, kind of like they're trying to channel Mercedes-Benz a bit there, which wouldn't be a first because as you might know, Infiniti and Mercedes have kind of done partnerships before, namely on the QX30 and the GLA from Mercedes. So just so there's that. Got USB ports. I got a USB-C and USB-A. I've got another USB-A port in here, which is great. Nice, comfortable NASA zero gravity seating. So really supportive. I mean, they feel great when I'm here kind of at stop. It'll be interesting to see how they feel once I start moving and my body starts moving around, how well they support me, but so far so good. I love this kind of, looks like kind of like a birch wood trim almost through here, which I think is really, really nice looking. Gauge cluster is not especially exciting to look at, but it's clear enough, and all the fonts and stuff are easy to read, so that's all good too. I've got a heads-up display ahead of me as well, so lots to like, and a comfortable seating position, a good amount of space. I have no problem with headroom as I knock my hat off. Here I got the big guy hat on, and even with the sunroof, I'm not getting any real problems here, and I don't think I've lost any headroom in the QX55, not up front anyway, to the QX50, so that's good. So it's nice up here. Let's take a look at the back seat. So Infiniti maintains that the QX55 has only lost a little bit of rear headroom to the QX50. I guess I'd be inclined to believe them. As you can see, I'm jammed up right against the headliner here. I've got the big guy hat on. That comes off a little bit better, but I'm still getting that rubbing up against the old noggin there. So pretty snug back here. And this seat does tilt, so you can adjust that right now. It's all the way back for me, so I've got a little more room to work. Legroom's okay. This seat, of course, is fit for a tall driver myself, and my knees aren't too jammed up against the seat back. I'm having to splay my legs a bit, but legroom is fine. And this seat actually goes forward and back 6 inches as well, so if you want to have a little more cargo space, you can move the seat forward, and that's important because while Infiniti says you haven't lost a huge amount of rear seat room, they have cost them, the switch to the coupe style has cost them some room out back. Again, you know, with that slanty rear deck there, being able to load gear high in the back, you can't really do that as much. So you want to move the seat forward so you can fold or haul longer items that way. But I've got, I've got the armrest here. I've got my own climate control system. I've got a USB port. I've got cup holders, place for my phone. Really nice Bose audio back here. Got some tweeters in the speakers too, so that's nice as well. And of course, the rear seat, the seat back folds forward, but it's a bit of a kind of a project to do it because you got to take that out, or else this won't close. Again, if this seat was further forward, that wouldn't be as much of an issue. But as it stands right now, for a taller driver, folding the rear seat back is going to take a little bit of work, and getting the headrest back in is going to take a little bit of work as well, it seems. There we go. So yes, this is the 2022 Infiniti QX55 crossover coupe, whatever thingy, but I should be so cavalier because if you remember, parent company Nissan, or Infiniti's parent company anyway, they were actually, while the Infiniti is not the first manufacturer to come out with the compact crossover coupe like this, the Germans have all been doing it for a while now with stuff like the BMW X4 or the Mercedes GLC, although this is the first Japanese manufacturer to be doing one of these. They weren't the first to do that, but way back when, Nissan did the Maxima 4-door sports coupe, and I think they did that vehicle even before there was a BMW Grand Coupe. I think that was after the Mercedes CLS, but what I'm saying is that Infiniti has thought out of the box before, and so now I guess they're kind of doing so again by being, like I said, the first Japanese manufacturer to build one of these crossover coupe kind of things. It comes as no surprise that it shares a ton of its underpinnings with the QX50 SUV, including the VC turbo 2-liter motor, 268 horsepower, 280 pound-feet of torque. Very cool engine that they say offers the efficiency of a diesel, but the smooth operation and the performance of a gas engine because of a trick kind of variable compression ratio thing they've done. And I've seen it demonstrated. They had a little kind of model mock-up of the internals of this vehicle's engine, and it's a pretty cool system. I'd be a little bit wary. I worry about breakage on sort of the extra elements that this car has that no other car except for the QX50 really, and I believe the Altima gets that now too in the US, that VC turbo. In fact, yes, it does. So this is not a common thing, so there's a few extra parts here that other vehicles don't get, so I guess there's something to think about there, but we're not here to talk about that for now. I'm here to sample this car in the now, and it is it's definitely zippy off the line for sure. Infiniti says they have tuned the transmission differently for the QX55 over the QX50, even though it is the same CVT automatic. They've made this a little more athletic, and the other thing about this is there's no pure trim level of the QX55. Pure is the base model for the QX50. There's no base model here of that. The base model, of course, of this car being the Lux, actually. And so there's no pure. There's also no autograph model either of this one, which is the high extra luxury trim that the QX50 gets. And that's because this vehicle is aimed at a younger buying group, a buying group that appreciates some sporty styling, some athletic handling, and so on. And Infiniti is convinced that that group isn't interested in an autobiography of fancy leather and so on, and they don't really care about spending low money on a luxe or on a pure model either. They'd rather have a few extra features over the pure. They're willing to pay for that even at base. So you have all the extra features that you don't get at the pure level that I talked about before here. So it's a little more kind of youth oriented with a couple extra features over that, which is nice. So they say it's a more sporty tuned transmission. Let's see if they're right here. And though it is a CVT, they've given us a bunch of virtual ratios to work with, 8 of them to be precise, to give you a little bit of that sensation that you're changing gears just like that. So, okay, it'll change up automatically for you, even if you have it in manual mode. I guess that's all part of the kind of fuel savings idea behind a CVT in the first place, and that's fine. But to be able to switch gears on my own with the paddles, that's a nice bonus, I'd say. And to their credit, Infiniti has tried to cover up that CVT whine a little bit by pumping a little bit of kind of engine noise into the cabin artificially. That gets some people's backs up. Doesn't really bother me. I mean, 2-liter turbo engines, variable compression or not, they don't tend to be the most kind of animated when it comes to their engine or exhaust notes, so I don't mind a little bit of boost in that regard, and Infiniti's done that with this QX55, so yeah, sure, go for it, why not? Handling it's a bit of a mixed bag in that the ride is fantastic and the actual response from the steering wheel is very good. The turn-in is good, the response from the front axle is great. However, this, like the QX50 and some other Infinitis, including the Q50 sedan and I think the Q60 sedan as well, or Q60 coupe I should say, uses a drive-by-wire or steer-by-wire system. Basically what that means is there is a clutch package on the steering column that kind of, and then there's an actuator that actually transmits electronically my inputs to the front wheels. Infiniti says that gives you more response, it gives you more kind of adaptability across the range of the different drive modes that are offered here, and you can tune the steering all by itself. If you go to your menu down here, and you go to the Infiniti Drive Mode selector, you can go to the steering, and then you can play around with the steering. You can choose from sport mode, standard mode, and you can change the responsiveness as well. So if you turn this up to like dynamic right here, more weight I'm feeling, that's for sure. And the responsiveness, as we take it through some turns here in just a second, is quite good. But there's very little feel through this wheel. I don't know if it's just because of my knowledge of this system, but you get that sense that there is a disconnect. It's not a completely mechanical connection from front axle to steering wheel, and you can feel that a little bit. And I can sense that as I pull through here. There's very little feel. The offset or dead zone is also a little on the high side, even in this dynamic mode. That's good for when you're on a straight highway. You don't want to be having to constantly correct your steering, but when you're on a more bendy road, you want maybe a little more responsiveness from the wheel. But I'm not going to take away too many marks for wheel responsiveness. It's very good, but very low on feel, which is the case with this QX55 and has been the case with every Infiniti I've sampled with this steering system, and I've sampled them all. Driver aids, well, put simply, there are a lot of them. I've got the Pro Pilot Assist kind of suite of features on here that gets me blind spot warning with steering intervention, so if you try to turn into a lane, there's a car there, it won't let you, although I found that to be a little bit overly sensitive. More on that in a minute. You've got distance control, you have adaptive cruise control, lane keep assist system, lane centering system. All really cool stuff. What I like about a lot of that can be done independent of having cruise control active, especially when it comes to lane centering and distance control from the car ahead of you. Oftentimes in vehicles, you need to first activate cruise control before you have access to those features. Not so here. Those can be turned on and off independently of cruise control. Big fan of that. However, it's the manner in which you turn all this on and off that I'm less enamored with. especially when it comes to lane keep assist system. Most of you by now have probably seen the button. There's a little button on a lot of cars. There's basically an image of a car leaving a lane from top down view. That's the picture. You just press that button, you turn lane keep assist on and off, and that's great. Oftentimes with steering assist too, if you don't want any steering intervention, you hit a button, turn that off. All that kind of stuff can all be done with hard buttons mounted either to the center console, by your left knee here, maybe up here sometimes, and that's great. But on this one here, you kind of got to go into a menu to kind of play around with all that stuff. I mean, the screen is responsive enough, and that's all great, but to have to look away and down like this to be able to play with all that, that's not ideal for me. I think there's a bit of a safety issue there. I don't love that aspect of it. With a hard button, you know where it is. You don't have to look at it to find it. You just press it, you're good to go. I do have a steering intervention button here, which I can use. That's great. But I don't have a lane keep assist button here, which I can use, which is too bad. I got to go through here to do all of that. So, you know, I'm not a huge fan of that. I think it takes too much attention away from the road. Part of me, and what's strange is you hit this button here that's marked with a little up top down view of a car with like kind of radar waves coming off of it. I'll put that in the instead as well. And that brings up a menu on the gauge cluster here that shows you all these features you have active, but you can't actually modify them through there. You have to go through the screen. It's almost like they've got these two screens here and they had to find something to do with them, so they put it on here. On the other hand, though, there's also a drive mode system that can be modified to my personal taste. I can modify my steering, I can modify the engine, the transmission, all that independent of the baked-in drive modes. That I go through here, and that makes sense to go through here to do that, because chances are you're not going to be driving while you're playing around with how you want your drive mode. You preset it, then you just select personal mode on the drive mode switch here, and you've got your own personal settings. You don't have to change those all the time, so you can do it while you're parked, when it's safe, set all that up, and then activate personal mode, and you've got it. So I'm a fan of that use of the screen, less so a fan of the lower display here when it's used for your driver aid systems. All that aside, though, I'm in my kind of personal mode here, and this is a great drive. Forget about the drive modes for a second, and the driver aids, of which I've turned most of them off now because I'm on a bendy road and I don't want all that on there. And this is a lot of fun, this vehicle. A little more body roll, perhaps, than I would like to see. It's a little more roly-poly than I thought it would be, considering its kind of MO, if you will rather. So I feel my body moving around in this zero gravity seat here a little more than I expected to, considering how this vehicle is meant to be kind of the more performance oriented of this QX50, QX55 twins. So a little more, but the steering response, once you get past all the steering feel stuff I talked about before, is good. The power is fantastic. I mean, 280 torque and 268, I think I said, horsepower. Feels like a lot more than that. It honestly does feel like a lot more than that. When you really get on it, this thing goes. A lot of fun to be had out on the open road in the QX55 for sure. And it's quiet, very slippery car. I believe it's more aerodynamic, a lower coefficient of drag than the QX50 has. So it's a little more, quiet, not as much wind noise coming through there. Dealing with some road noise, that's fine, but the worst noise I'm getting, or the most offensive, if you want to go kind of harshly, is that CVT transmission. But otherwise, this is a Lux. Plus, you've got this great zero gravity seat, and these are super comfortable seats. They talk about being developed in partnership with NASA and all that, and whatever. That could be a little bit of marketing speak, but regardless, this is a very comfortable seat, and I'm definitely satisfied with that. Now I'm out on the road, and then the seats start to have to support me as I go through turns and stuff like that. It's one thing to just sit in the car and feel how the seat feels, but when you really know how good a seat is, when you've been in the car for a while, you're out on the road, and your body's being tossed to and fro through turns, and the seat's keeping you nice and kind of centered in there, and that's what this one's doing. So well done, Nissan Infiniti, on the zero gravity seats in the QX55. At the end of the day, though, man, it's all about that engine. This is a great motor. I've loved it in the QX50. I've never had a chance to sample it in the Ultima. I'd like to, but now I'm sampling it here again. I think it's a fantastic motor. I love the power it gives. It's a smooth motor, works well, and I love it. And I like the handling in this, less the steering feel, but I like the handling. It's good. The transmission, again, has been tuned a little bit to be a little more responsive. You can use the paddles if you really want to, and I like to at least have that ability, even though it's a CVT. But this is a really cool, and it's such a cool looking car, as we talked about before. This is kind of like it's kind of like almost the next level, the next generation of Infiniti. It's sort of kind of ushering in the new era for them. We're going to see the QX60 get fully redesigned soon, and that's going to be, I think, the real kind of coming out party for what Infinitis are going to look like going forward. This is a bit of a middle step because the front end looks a bit like the QX50 looks already and so on, but otherwise a very cool looking car. I love the color. Yeah, you know, the driving modes, driver assist system, has its bugaboos. I talked about that, get over all that, and I'm glad to have all those features. So, fun little car this. Good for Infiniti for dipping a toe in this kind of segment. It's kind of an upcoming segment, this kind of four-door coupe SUV thing, even though the Germans have been doing it for a while. Good for them for stepping up to the plate here and doing a pretty good job of developing a vehicle for that segment. Look for the full story of this Infiniti QX55 on auto123.com sometime soon. But again, until then, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Sayonara, folks.